Welcome to Young Money with Tracy Bissett, the advice show for young millionaires in the making. It's time for some $1 Million Straight Talk with Tracy, President and Chief Financial Fitness Trainer at Bissett Financial Fitness. Each week, Tracy's going to tell you what you need to know now at the beginning of your earning curve. Basic and advanced financial concepts made clear, healthy money habits and the missteps to avoid, and all the stuff that you can do to set yourself up for a future of fantastic financial freedom. Ready to lace up and start this week's financial fitness training? Let's do it, Tracy.
Welcome to the Young Money Podcast. I'm really delighted today we have a very special guest, Maxim Cramer. Welcome to the show, Maxim.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm very glad that you are joining us. And so Maxim is the technical coach and consultant who helps women entrepreneurs create world-class software. With her ability to erase the gap between the technology and business, she's worked on apps that have seen 1 million downloads on the first day and been featured in Apple retail stores around the globe. As founder of MENNENIA, Maxim empowers female founders to leverage technology and make their biggest impact yet. Repeatedly called out for her ability to turn technology into everyday English, flattening communication barriers between technical teams and visionaries, she's taken on the audacious goal of securing a digital future for women by doubling the number of female-founded tech businesses worldwide. Maxim has also been invited to speak at multiple conferences, including events for Google and Facebook in places from London to Japan. So welcome again, Maxim.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Great. I've read your formal bio, but I know the listeners would love to hear more in your own words what your day-to-day looks like and kind of all the things you've got going on, because I know you're into so many different things.
Yes, definitely. So really, actually, at the moment, I feel like I've got 2 jobs. So MENNENIA is what I've started kind of unofficially a few years ago and have been growing slowly and steadily, I would say, until date. But I'm also still employed full-time. So currently I work at Autodesk. I've been there for 2 years. I'm a principal design technologist. And really it's similar to kind of what you mentioned in my bio. I'm a software engineer by trade, but I actually sit in the design team and I work across teams to make sure that what we're building is really what our customers need and to prototype earlier on in the process. So we're not going to expensively build something out that actually is not required or isn't really going to move the needle for us as a company, but also for our customers. So that is my kind of 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, I would say. And then early morning and early evening and weekends and everywhere else and in between, I work with women entrepreneurs on kind of realizing their vision and their goals that they have within the tech space, and often they find a lot of barriers in the way, and we get through those.
Excellent. So you and I have known each other for probably not quite a year yet, but we're getting on there. And I know how hardworking you are. I know how passionate you are about making tech simple and really taking the complexity out of it so it's really accessible for so many people. And you've achieved so much success to date. Now, when you think about everything that you've achieved, are there some key success factors or any kind of patterns of behavior that have showed up repeatedly that you attribute your success to, or the things that you're doing that have brought that success to you?
Yeah, I think there are a few. The first one that comes to mind is just bits that are within my personality that have just worked in my favor. So I can be kind of naive, energetic, and curious. Naive more so in, when something comes my way, something that I can do. I'll give an example in a second. I'm not the one who thinks, oh, I can't do that. I'll be like, oh, that sounds fun. Like, let's see how that goes. And, that was weird growing up. So I grew up primarily in the Netherlands, and people would that was not done. They would kind of look down on that. Like, for example, I went to university abroad, and it was kind of like, why would you do that? And I would be the person that was like, yeah, that sounds fun. I'm interested. I'm curious. Let's do it. So a more realistic example then of how that actually translated into success was that, long story short, I ended up on this 25 under 25 women in tech list, which was really great, and I felt very honored. And off the back of that, I got an email from someone who ran a iOS conference. My background at the time was in mobile development, so iOS means like iPhone development.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent me this email and they were like, "Hi, you seem like someone who's got interesting stuff to share. Would you like to speak at this conference?" And I emailed back being like, "Oh, that's great. Thanks. Sure. Sounds awesome." And that's what I mean with that kind of naivety and that energeticness, because most people, I realized after, like friends of mine that have had invites to speak at conferences, would be really nervous. They'd say things like, "Well, but what am I going to talk about? Why me? Why should I be there?" And it's not that I don't feel those things. I had a complete breakdown like a week before. I'm like, I'm going to be speaking at this event. It's much bigger than I thought. Who am I to come there and share something? Like, those doubts are definitely there. But my first reaction is excitement. And that's actually gotten me quite far, I would say.
Excellent. I love that. So for all you young money listeners, take that in. Approaching your life with that kind of enthusiasm and curiosity is so key. And it really shows to everyone around you. And people are like, I want to be near that person. I want to spend time with them, because it's really infectious. So I think that's wonderful. And thank you for sharing the personal side of that around your doubts and how you do still feel nervous. So we're not trying to paint just the positivity side of it, but the reality of it. And while your overarching approach is, that sounds fun, let's try it, you still feel all the things that everybody else feels. You're just moving through that to something that's going to be good for you.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that has shown up in your life as being either patterns of behavior or traits that you think have contributed besides the naive, energetic, and curious ones you mentioned?
Yeah, so I think another one was kind of focusing more on what I would consider intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic. And with that, I mean, like, I do things because I really care about them rather than being told to care about them. So when I think about the beginning of my career, so I studied computer science, and then I was offered a job at HP as a technical consultant, which sounded perfect, right? I would be working with clients, finding technical solutions to their problems, which is kind of what I do right now. But that sounded great. So I moved to London, and turns out that was actually not a great job. I spent most of the time in an office staring at a screen doing nothing because they didn't always have a project. So I went off and I learned lots. They were happy to send me on tons of training. But really, there was no real work for me, no matter how much I asked. And then I got bored and I created some things, which I then got to present to certain clients, which was great. But after about 7 months of that, I was like, this is not really what I came here to do, if that makes sense. So I remember distinctively kind of being on a walk during the day, because we would kind of just go for coffee several times a day because many people in the office had nothing to do, which sounds so strange when you think about it. But I sat in the park, I called my mum and I was like, listen, I know I'm in London, I have a good job, it pays well, but I'm going to resign because this is just not what I want to spend my time doing. I was lucky that I was in technology and I knew that I had other options available. It was very much the case that I care a lot about what I do, and it was less about a certain prestige of a job or a certain title of a job, and much more what I did with my time day to day. And then I became much more focused in how I chose my next opportunities, because that became a benchmark of, okay, it has to be something of that nature, which meant I chose flexible roles that allowed for growth. So I actually ended up in situations where I got to work on really cool things that if I'd kind of climbed the corporate ladder as, you would expect almost, I probably wouldn't have had a chance to work on those types of projects or grow in the way that I did to kind of get to where I am today.
Excellent. I love that. So probably some fear in the resignation, but you knew because of the market that there were other opportunities out there. And I think that's so important, especially for everybody who's listening. We don't necessarily know how things are going to go when we take first jobs, and we need to figure out the things that we like to do based on our personality and really what gives us joy and fulfillment. So having that courage to step away, and then, like you said, you didn't follow the regular career path, but by doing so, you're actually developing probably more skills. You had a lot more fulfillment and probably were exposed to so many more different things than you would have been.
Absolutely. And I think I ended up actually skipping steps. If you were to actually track a corporate ladder, the role I have currently and that I got when I was 28 would have not happened had I actually climbed the corporate ladder, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's wonderful. And this show is all about creating your own path for financial success, and how you do that. A large part of it is by working, and it can be from your salary, but it's also about, do you get joy? So I love that. And I appreciate the candor with which you shared it. Now, you are a young person, as you've mentioned your age now. And when you think about your biggest challenge or something you wish you'd known earlier in your life from a financial standpoint, what comes to mind?
I think probably it's something around monetizing hobbies and skills that I have. So many people do that now, which I think is amazing. And it's become easier than ever through YouTube and socials and so on to actually share what you're good at. I didn't do that as much. I started creating designs and kind of websites and development when I was 11. And I
Wow.
was online a lot. I had a blog back in the day when people still thought, what is that? And I kind of thought that it meant that you would be, snatched off a street one day and it would be grave danger to be on the internet. So I did a lot of those things. And in the end, the skills definitely have paid off in different ways, but I didn't think about monetizing those skills. I didn't think that they were valuable, if that makes sense. I think that is a flip side of the curious mindset that I have. I find it interesting to learn, but I didn't think about it in leveraging it necessarily.
Excellent. And I know you do have many skills and hobbies, because I know as well you're a very excellent chef. So that's another one where you can actually, if you decide to, that's another route you can go into. And certainly I'm sure people could learn a lot from you on that angle. So that's great. And it's always to be reflective and think about, what is it that I can do with everything that I am? So I love that. Do you commingle your personal or business expenses? Do you run your business from your bank account, or defer to your bookkeeper or accountant for financial matters? If you do one or all of these things, the live Biz Money Mistakes Masterclass, Top 3 Mistakes to Avoid and How to Take Control of Your Business, is for you. This live training has been specifically designed for entrepreneurs with sales in the 6 to 7 figure range who want to proactively change the way they are handling their money matters and navigate the current environment with success. So if you are an entrepreneur with sales at these levels and want to make informed, powerful money decisions, you do not want to miss this important class. Head over to the show notes, check out the link. It's bizmoneymistakes.com so you can register today. Stop waiting for things to change, take back control of your business, and join me for the live Biz Money Mistakes Masterclass. Now, as you mentioned, you've got, I'm going to call it a side hustle just so everybody's resonating with the term, but I know it is your longer term plan to make the business a full-time opportunity, timing to be determined. And so when you think about what you've learned so far when it comes to entrepreneurship, what are some success tips, as well as some missteps maybe you've made or you've seen other people made, that you can share to help everybody who's listening as they maybe contemplate a side hustle or actually doing it full time, starting their own business?
Definitely, yeah. I think the biggest one is give it the time that it needs, because you need to do it in order to refine it. So no amount of planning up front will be able to help you, in the sense that, obviously it helps compared to not planning at all necessarily, but as you start it, you'll start tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it. So it won't necessarily generate revenue off the bat, which is one of the big reasons I chose to do it along the side while I still work. Also, through my job, there was a point in time where I felt I had enough buffer to invest into the business, because, a business does need cash to get off the ground. There are a lot of things you can do effectively and efficiently, I think, especially with software nowadays. It doesn't need a lot of cash, but it also depends on the nature of your business, I suppose. But I wanted to be able to invest in the training, the teaching that I needed to bring my best self to the business. So I would say that personally, I've got quite a big cash reserve. And the way I did that was, I think, some very simple principles. I save a good chunk of what I earn always. I only spend what I have. I really dislike credit. And I just have this natural, I need to have a buffer. That's just my personality. So having that there makes me feel much more comfortable to take the risks I need in the business and to move the business forward than if I had quit my job, started it, and then been like, okay, now I'm scrambling because obviously I need to, look after myself and kind of take any job or have the business morph into something that it needs to be just to bring in money, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so I want to touch on a couple points that you've raised. What you said, give it the time that it needs, that is absolutely critical. So I am a huge proponent of people creating business plans and actually spending the time on it, especially when it comes to the financial part, because as you mentioned, it takes time to bring in the revenue. So you need to have kind of a realistic plan on how much time and money will it take for me to get to that place. I love what you shared about having the cash reserves. Certainly everyone has a different risk appetite or tolerance, but cash is the lifeblood of any business. So the more that you have, the more risk you can take. And certainly from what I'm hearing from you, those are all really calculated risks. And I love how you come about it. So I know I interjected there. So if there's anything else you wanted to add, any other success tips, or if there's anything maybe you've witnessed or you did yourself that you'd like the young money listeners to avoid, would be great.
Yeah, I think one last thing is, and this is more generic than necessarily business related, though it applies there as well, is that really decide what you want your money to do for you. That is something that I've learned over the course of my 20s, I would say, because, being someone who saves and being someone who I tended to live kind of below my means. And I was lucky because, again, in technology, people, I earn a good salary, so I was able to save a lot. And so that was then there. And then if I'm crazy about skincare, for example, or like you mentioned, I love cooking. So I have some cooking gadgets. And if they were then on sale, I would purchase them fairly guilt-free, I would say. But over time, I was like, is this actually what I want my money to be doing for me? Because now one of the things I'm looking at as well, aside of everything else, is investing into property, because I would like to get to a point that I have more diversified streams of income and a portfolio. So I have an actual reason to put some money aside and put it towards a goal. And so becoming a lot more precise around that, and same in the business in terms of, okay, this is what I'm setting aside for this particular goal. Or if I am able to hit this threshold, I will invest it in this kind of way, has made it much more easier to plan, I feel, and kind of stopped me from randomly spending it on cool things, even though in theory I could. I've got it, but to get less swayed by a sale.
I love that. And I talk about it on the show very regularly, that it's important to have your goals. And then every time you're spending money, think about, does this bring me closer to or farther away from my goals? So as you said, you could buy more kitchen gadgets, you could spend more money on skincare, but because you know what's important to you, there's probably a finite amount you're going to spend. And then you're going to say, it's more important for me to get those diversified streams of income going, or I want to be able to make this investment in my business. And certainly if we've had some lessons learned or reminded for us during COVID, it is that having diverse streams of income is extremely important, so that if something happens to one of them, you do have other things to fall back on. And that really aligns with your philosophy about being conservative and knowing that you're going to be okay no matter what you're doing. So thank you so much for sharing all that. And I love it. And I can't wait to see when you get all these diversified streams of income up and running. That's going to be fantastic. We'll have to have you back to talk about kind of the ups and downs of how that goes. So that's wonderful. Now, you sound very prudent. You're very conservative. You know a lot of these key lessons already, like living below your means, saving the money, having those goals. Is there anyone who's either a celebrity or someone in your life who inspires you when it comes to financial matters?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think one, it's been my mum. When we ended up, in the beginning of my life, my parents, and especially my dad, he had a really good job. And then as I entered kind of high school, my dad moved jobs, and it meant that my mum was starting to kind of supplement that income for the household, for me and my brother, and everything that we wanted to do and the goals that we had. So she opened up her own nail studio because she could run that kind of semi from home. It was attached to our house, and she could kind of have control over her hours, so she could pick us up from school. But also it was a high return for the hour that she would work, if that makes sense. Her rate per hour was much higher than had she taken a part-time job or a salaried job elsewhere, which she initially tried and then decided this was a better goal. And she ran that very successfully for a long amount of time until she moved out of Holland like about 6 years ago. So it was running for 15 years and she had clients with her that were with her that entire time. But at the same time, I also saw the discussions that my parents had around it, and that I think, money doesn't bring you happiness, but it can make things easier. And if there are concerns or worries, it can also amplify doubt, if that makes sense. And that feeling of like, I want to make sure that my livelihood is sorted and that I'm not in a position that I can't take care of myself, if that makes sense, really stems from how I was brought up and seeing that play out. And, we never had any problems, but it was because my parents worked really hard to keep it that way. So I think that was a big influence. And then in terms of more of a celebrity or someone, that I don't know personally, there is a company actually in the UK, it's called Gymshark. And having seen them grow has been truly phenomenal. The founder, Ben Francis, he started making kind of gym wear that you couldn't really buy at the time. It was really geared towards bodybuilders. In the UK, he got a screen printer. He was sewing the clothes himself and managed to get to £500,000 revenue by sewing the clothes himself. And then scaled and scaled. And now they're $1 billion company in just like 8 years. And seeing how he's been really humble and how he invests the money in the business to grow and how he's chosen to do that, bring on board different people, even step aside as a CEO. He's now much more on brand and marketing because that's his forte, and say, I'm actually not good at logistics and operations, so I'm going to get other people to run that for the sake of the business, has been really inspiring to see. He documents a good chunk of it on YouTube in case you're interested.
Perfect. Well, I'll definitely put the link in the show notes for everybody. Also, we talk regularly on Young Money that growth is very hungry in a business and its fuel is cash. So I love the personal story that you shared and how you had that front row seat to see a business in action and how your mom did that, and then how your parents worked together to make sure that everything was running smoothly. And then just that example of the scale and growth, and how I can tell from your excitement when you're talking about him, how much that's impacted the decisions that you're making and how you are able to see these things in action that then you can turn into your business too, which is great. Now, before I let you go, are there any final pieces of advice or insights that you'd like to reiterate, or something new that you want to share with the listeners?
I think my final thoughts are that when it comes to finances, money really is a tool, like with which you can do things, create things, live in a certain way. And what that is to you, it's really personal. Only you can decide what you want it to do for you. There's no particular right way, or that just because society tells you to live in a certain way. And what I like as well about seeing money as a tool is it detaches a kind of personal fear or feelings that you have about it. So I think finding a way or thinking about it in that way so you have enough to invest into the life that you want to create is an outlook that I have that I find really works for me, and might also work for the listeners.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I totally share your philosophy, because once we've got the fear removed and the emotion from it, we can look at things objectively. Often I hear people talking about they're worried about their situations, but they don't know the numbers. And as soon as you can start looking at them objectively, then you can come up with plans to hit your goals, plans to solve problems. And it becomes very problem solving focused with a positive look on the future. So I think that's wonderful.
I love numbers.
Yeah, I do too. And I encourage people to be financial detectives. So I'm sure you are a financial detective in your personal life and in your business.
Thanks.
Now, you've got so much on the go. What are you working on now? And where can listeners go to learn more about you and your business?
So I'm working on a new program, which is called the MVP Breakthrough. So for those who are in the tech space, they find that the MVP is actually the most challenging part. It really is that pivotal moment between idea, getting things going, that really creaky first, hard to start up and gain the momentum moment in the business, and then what comes after. And I find that that's where a lot of people kind of want help and advice and coaching. So I'm creating a program around that that's launching later in the year, which is really exciting. And otherwise, I'm on MENNENIA.com and also on my podcast, Cutting Through Tech, if you'd like to learn more about technology.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Maxime. I've learned so much more about you, more than I already knew. I love the lessons that you shared really around monetizing your skills and habits. I think is a great takeaway for everyone. That attitude of that sounds fun, I'm going to check it out. And the theme around all of the things that you mentioned in your business, in your family life, and even your final thought around the importance of cash, importance of giving things time and being able to set goals and hit them in a way that you choose to, and that everybody's is different, but really using money and cash as the tool to get there. So I know that this will be a really well received episode with the listeners, all really great, practical, easy to implement tips. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It was really fun to be on here and talk about this stuff. I think one of the reasons I really love your show is money is something not a lot of people talk about, especially indeed to make it objective rather than have those fears around it. So it was really great being here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And so there you have it, Young Money listeners. Maxim Cramer, technical coach and consultant who helps women entrepreneurs create world-class software. Until next time, take good care and stay financially fit.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. To all you millionaires in the making out there, if you love this podcast, please subscribe on iTunes to keep your financial fitness training going. Oh, and leave us a review. And be sure to visit Visit, 2 S's, 2 T's, financialfitness.com to take your free financial fitness assessment. Find out how financially fit you really are. See you next week, young millionaires to be.